I think the most important thing for me was just capturing the honesty, and showing this life in a true, honest light. Because it's so easy to, it's been glorified, it's been stylized. Hollywood has gotten a hold of it, and I just wanted to make it honest and true, and make sure that you can relate to these characters beyond the drugs and beyond the scenario that they're going to see, that they're real people, and I wanted to make sure that was highlighted.
Thank you so much for coming out to support the movie. Let's just get things rolling here. I'd like to introduce my co-host of the Q&A, Stephen Bertoppi from Made It Cool News. I'd like to bring back the director, Colin Schiffli. And please give a warm Chicago welcome to the star and writer, David Dastmalchian.
David, I almost hesitate to ask what I think might be the most obvious first question, but
where do I
this
find
seems very authentic to me. Tell me about your exposure to this world and what made you sort of come up with this idea of, we can talk a little bit about whether these two even belong together or not later, but I mean, just tell me about the idea. Where did it come from, and how did you sort of make it as authentic as you could?
Sure. The battle with addiction has been a big part of my personal narrative, like my life's journey. In many different ways has addiction played its role in my life, but in my own personal addiction to opiates and heroin specifically, that is a life experience and something that, as I moved into years of sobriety and started to find my way back to a career in storytelling and a life of wanting to tell stories, on the biggest scale possible and through the medium of film, when I went to write my first screenplay, which was Animals, I took the advice of write what you know. And so I wanted to write a story that wasn't a drug movie, but I wanted to use my personal experience. I wanted to write a love story. I wanted to write a story about the complications of what love is and addiction to people and addiction to substance and how messy and complicated of a subject that is, because it's something I wrestle with to this day. And, I'm 12 years clean as of a week ago, and I thank you very much. But, that's very nice. Well, whether you have 12 days, 12 years, 12 minutes, or you're not yet clean, it's just a really complicated issue, and it's a really great metaphor for all the other things that I think in life are really complicated and messy, like love and relationships.
You knew you wanted to make it a love story and not just an addiction story, but this sort of very obvious codependency that they have, and they're sort of bringing each other down in a lot of ways, even though there definitely comes a point, it's probably a different point for everybody watching it, where we start to think, should we be rooting for them to make it together? Or do we realize now that they shouldn't be together because they'll never get out of this if they stay together? Was that something that sort of fascinated you too? That
it does to this day. It does. The concept of soulmates, the concept of falling in love, the concept of the difference between blood love and relationship love, and the people you find on your journey, and there's no perfect relationship, obviously, and there's so many. I hope people take away from this. There are really wonderful things about their love for each other. They're not, they do have a deep love for one another, but they're not in a point and a place in their lives when they met in this lifetime that it was for the best of their survival, perhaps. And I'm glad that you think that that would be great. I'm glad that there's probably conversations about it. At what point do we wonder, should we push for them to stay together or not? Because Colin and I wanted people to walk away hopefully with more, questions and conversations than absolute answers. Like, it's good at this point that they don't, because you never really know in real life. Do you know what I mean? That's the hardest thing about, like, when do you walk away from someone, or when do you walk away from a behavior? When do you embrace a new behavior? There's nothing that puts up a big sign in front of your face and says it's time. It's so hard.
Colin, how did you two find each other? Did you know each other before this, or was this?
Yeah, we knew each other before. We actually met here in Chicago. I went to school at Columbia College. Yeah.
And it was my senior year of college, and I was doing like the senior practicum, and we needed a very specific type of actor, and it was particularly a kind of creepy, weird character actor. And just saying, it was the year that The Dark Knight had come out, and Dave is in that, and I'm a huge nerd fan for that. So we were like, we gotta get this guy for a movie, and we found out he lived in Chicago, and he said he'd do it. And we kind of hit it off, really well when we did that project, and we moved out to LA coincidentally at the same time. And kind of, he was like, hey, let's get lunch sometime, and I thought he'd like never actually call me, and he did, and we like kind of just hit it off, and a year or so went by of us just kind of goofing around, learning the ropes of LA and whatnot. And I mean, he obviously, you were much, a lot more established than me, but so I was just trying to take notes, and we'd just, make fun little videos together, Funny or Die videos, whatever, just goofy little short films, and we just like connected. And then one day, like 3 years ago or so, you were like, hey, I have this feature, you gotta check it out, read it, and of course, like, if it was the worst thing in the world, I would be like, yeah, let's make it, because, it's my first feature.
Great endorsement.
Yeah, no, but luckily for me, for all of us, it was a good script, it was great, and it wasn't until you said it was based on a true story that I had to, be like, whoa, I have to reread this and really figure out, we have to make this movie. It's more than just, at first glance, you're like, oh, there's drugs, and, it's an independent movie, it's two people, I kind of thought, other than the story being very fascinating and feeling so authentic, that is what really drew me to it, and I knew that it was just more than another indie movie, so I knew that we had to just tell it for what it was.
As an actor, was there a particular scene in the film that hit a little too close to home in the moment when you got to that, or a scene that you might have been dreading to film, or was this completely just another version of things that had happened?
But when we were doing scenes like the drug stuff, you got to remember that's so technical. Colin's right here, and Larkin's right there, and my wife is right on the other side of the door. Does that look good? Do we have enough powder? Do we need to put more in there? I'm surrounded by people I love, so that wasn't hard.
The scenes. You're actually playing. You're both actually playing two characters here. You're playing the much more stable ones when you're not jonesing for a fix, and then you're playing these it's a Jekyll and Hyde thing for both of you, really. And there's been a couple other movies that have done it, but I can't really think of one that's kind of got it just exactly right in that transition in particular. But was that a tough thing to do? Was that a tough transition to make? And
I think I don't know. What do you think?
It was the tough part was for me. I was looking at it technically all the time, shooting. We shot so much out of order, constantly. One day they were at the lowest, one day they were at the highest. But luckily, we had watched a lot of documentaries, and I know you lived it obviously, but for me it was very I had to this is all new to me, and I wanted to be as honest and true as I could. And other than what he could coach me with. We watched so many documentaries that showed these lifestyles, and I was so amazed by 1 second there'd be the happiest people in the world, and the next second they'd be screaming at each other, and then a mess, and then they'd also be good, and I wanted to capture that. So I think because we shot out of order and it was so random, it just kind of naturally happened because we were also running around exhausted anyways, and I think it was easy to kind of snap into that.
Yeah.
Those hard places pretty quickly.
The two things that existed from the 2006 edition of the screenplay to this one are the opening sequence at the hospital and the final sequence in the pool. I always knew my end scene, and Colin always said, I love that end scene, let's keep getting there, But it was very important to me. Not in any respect will I ever, and I hope I never come across as somebody that's going to pretend or portend or act like I'm some kind of poster boy or example of the world of recovery, because that's not what I will be good at. What I would hope is the idea that there was a time in my life when all I dreamed about was being able to have an apartment, wake up, not have a monkey on my shoulder, just get out from under that possession. It's really a true possession. That's what addiction is. And I that's been very important to me. For people to walk away from this film And there have been a lot of really, really well done films made about this subject matter, and I didn't want to throw our hat in the ring in the idea of like, oh, like we said earlier, and those aren't all just drug movies. You know, Drugstore Cowboy's more than a drug movie, Requiem's more than a drug movie, Trainspotting's more than a drug movie. You can't just classify them as that, but they fit a genre, right? I do think ours has an ending that can leave people hopefully with a sense of something different than they maybe have experienced at a film like this before. And that's really important to us.
Yeah, well, that was my favorite part about the script, just the title. I was like, oh, what is this about? And then like applying all the metaphors. I mean, of course, as a director, like finding all the ridiculous metaphors you can put in and whatnot. It's fun to do that, and it was in the script. So.
Well, the title I wrote immediately, and I you know, when I didn't have a place to sleep, when I did sleep in my car, the Lincoln Park Zoo was a place that I spent a lot of. And not just when I was on drugs, as a first arriver in Chicago. I mean, as the other day I went to Lincoln Park Zoo. It's an amazing place. And you can't help but walk around a zoo and look at these incredible animals that I think zoos are wonderful places and they teach great things, but there's something so sad about looking at the most beautiful animal. You know, this is a silverback gorilla who is in about a 12 by 20 foot enclosure, who in another world would be the king of his domain in the jungle. And you think of Jude and Bobby in the sense of like, as all people who live in this sick, sad state of disease are, there's so much more like potential for people. You know what I mean? So I that was the title.
Yeah, it was all in there. Like it was in the script. I think it just was fun to find how to pull it out, and you know, again, the metaphors between like their animals, like what we become at our lowest, or who we are, you know, what we are at the root of it, and of course finding ways to emphasize that with the clips of the animals, just trying to shoot them.
Wanting to be loved, probably. Wanting to be accepted. I think I have great memories of storytelling experiences from a very young age, and I think that sticks with you. You know, my mom is here tonight, and she sat in the back row at the kindergarten talent show at the Oak Park Elementary School, where I sang over the Rainbow Connection, you know, in my best Kermit voice when I was 6. And Jim Henson, you know, very young age, there was things that had a major impact on me. Storytelling, I loved it, and I love what they do for us because, you know, I don't want to get all meta or whatever and grand, but I'm on the stage and I have the microphone. So I think that we all trick ourselves into believing that we are alone. And whether you've ever been a drug addict or you've been just addicted to another person or addicted to food or addicted to shopping or addicted to work or addicted to whatever you're addicted to, like, I would hope that people could watch a film that I make or tell a story or write or watch a story I've written that for like an hour, you just feel a little less alone. That was the thing I always loved about stories. Being in the audience and then being the storyteller was that you just, this weird, beautiful thing happens when somebody got it right and came to tell me a story that I just transported. I didn't feel alone for a minute. And who's just a regular Joe down the street, right? If I throw a dart into this audience, and not with a sharp point, but like just even like a soft point, whoever it lands at, I guarantee you we could follow them home tonight and start pulling stories from them and start getting to know them and start videotaping them, and we could make a brilliant movie about, I guarantee you, a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I think we could pluck any one of us out of this and you could find it. So there's no such thing as just an ordinary Joe, and that's a problem with like our society's view on addiction. I think we look at a lot of addicts and say, well, what are they gonna do? I mean, they get clean, then what? You know, just like we throw people away, and we can't.
Like, in regards of using the needles, was that into a prosthetic or was that?
Yeah, that was really. No, it's
Magic the movie.
It was a little of both. Yeah, obviously creating the illusion of all this, you know, just that was my obsession with it, wanting it to be as real and like feel like you're literally there with them in the back seat. And Dave was.
Yeah, I mean, our artist Amber Tellerico
She was amazing.
did amazing work, you guys. You know, like you. As long as you felt like what you were seeing was really happening, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
We did drug school the day before we started shooting.
Yeah,
I was the only person of the whole team who had ever used illicit drugs of everybody. Colin, all the other people. So my wife has not even like ever smoked pot in her life. Like I think she's been had wine drunk once in her life. And she was making the heroin that we could cook and shoot. She was so technical about it.
Yeah.
She's ordering crap online. Like, well, they say that you can actually put this into a prop and it'll look real.
Glucose and blah, blah, sugar and yeah.
Technical, man. It's the magic of movies.
You just find out the how to make it work practically and make it believable. And I mean, that was the fun part. Just learning how to figure out how to make it work like realistically, and that's pretty much what we did. A lot of tricks. Yeah.
So which one was drug school, Columbia or DePaul?
DePaul.
I mean, as an actor, it's all tricks. It was great. I had months. We knew we were going to try and shoot this past summer, but man, I had a long build up to it. So I have a friend that I work out with who's amazing, named Andy McKenzie. He's an actor and he's great at body transformations. And I said, I want to look as horrible as possible, but I'm also going to be producing and location scouting and casting extras. I need energy to do 18 to 20 hour days. And so I did a lot of exercise. I got a very strict diet. And
was it hard mentally to just kind of go into that character?
I keep saying this, but it wasn't as hard as I was expecting, I guess. It wasn't, again, because I was surrounded by the people I was surrounded by, because as dark a film as it is at times, we had a pretty amazing time making the film. I was with people I love every day, doing what I love every day.
As Colin, I don't want to get too off topic, but as Colin had mentioned earlier, that the sort of this journey that you're on, David, that led you up to this, was The Dark Knight Rises. That's where Colin.
Dark Knight.
I'm sorry, Dark Knight. Sorry, it was on my brain. We were texting each other last night. All of his movies were on cable last night. But The Dark Knight. Just share your story about how you got that cast in that role, because you were telling that.
I was doing theater in Chicago. I got some commercials going, so I was able to just make a living as an actor. And I was brought in to audition for one of the main properties at the beginning of the film, with John Captiveri, the casting director over on Western in Addison, in a strip mall office by the high school over there. And whatever I did made him think this guy is good for schizophrenia, I guess, because then he brought me back the next day, and I got to and I got to meet the director, and I read for the director, and I was reading dialogue that was like I was supposed to get the bus, or you know what I mean? Like I had those lines from the beginning of the film. And then I never heard anything, and I was doing a play at Writers Theater in Glencoe. I was doing a play. We were in rehearsal, then we went into performance. That's a 4.5 month process. It was long gone. And my agents at Stewart, I remember Todd Trina from Stewart Talent called me on my birthday and said, they're not saying what it is, but you're going to be like a Joker's henchman, and they need to know if you have a passport because you're going to London. I was like, ah! And my head exploded, and then and that's how it happens. Very.
Where is this film in terms of distribution? When people, I'm sure, will want to talk about it and encourage people to go see it, as will we. How's that going to work?
The distribution model for a film like this is really interesting, and we're learning a lot. There are definitely some really cool companies who are interested in our film, and it's just figuring out what's the right fit and who is the most interested. Premiering last month in Austin was a great help for that process. We are working with a sales agent who is talking to a number of companies, and Colin and I this is very new for us, so we're learning a lot. Every week we have a call in with those guys, and we're gridding out what's happening. But I ask if you did really love the movie or you want more people to see it, to hopefully spread the word about it, and we want to, for them to want to sell a film, they want to know that there's a demand for a film, and this is a tough sell as a film goes. Do you know what I mean? This isn't the movie you take to market and you put up at AFM in Santa Monica. Look at this. It's its own thing. But I know there's an audience for it out there. At least I like to believe there is. So I feel optimistic. We feel good about it. It's going to take some time. We'll hopefully have some announcements. The midsummer is a goal for us to have an announcement on distribution by midsummer.
Well, like a film, I mean, you guys know this, but I say this all the time. A film like this is going to kind of live or die based on word of mouth. So use your mouths, use every avenue of social media available to you. Talk about the film. Let people know that you love it and want it to come out so everyone else can see it. So that's awesome. That's our goal here. Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for coming out. Seriously.